Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. The other day I did a video for a book bag, which is this one, and you guys all loved it. But many of you have said that you would prefer handles. So that's what we're doing today. And the other thing we're going to do is put one pocket on the inside. So somebody else had suggested that they would really love to use a bag like this for their Bible, but they'd like to be able to put a pocket on the inside so that they can carry one or two pens. So we've got this gorgeous fabric today. I'm not doing box corners on this bag, so it's going to be completely flat. And instead of the Velcro tab, we've got a magnetic closure. And if you were going to use this for a tablet or an iPad, you might want to use the Velcro instead if you've got concerns about magnets. But you can fit a nice size book or your Bible inside the bag, and then you've got a nice pocket on the inside with a little decorative edge using the outside fabric. So that's what we're up to today. Let's get straight to it. Here are all the things that we're going to need for this bag today. I'm using a stabilizer called Parlan. It's a really lightweight stabilizer. If you want to use something like foam, you can do that if you want something with a bit more rigidity in it. But this is what I prefer to use. I've got a small piece of fabric for the flap at the front of the bag. We've got a magnetic closure. And if you don't have access to those, you can just use Velcro. Velcro is what I used on the last book bag. And I have two pieces of fabric for my handles. Measurements will be up on the screen in a moment. I have another piece of fabric just as a decorative feature for the pocket on the inside of the bag. I'm using this for my lining, and I'll also be using this fabric. It's a cotton for the pocket on the inside, and this is the fabric that I'm using for the outside of the bag. It's a horrible fabric. The print is absolutely gorgeous, and that's why I'm using it, but it frays really badly. So I'm going to have to be careful with it. It's a synthetic fibre. I think it might be an outdoor furnishing or cushion fabric. Whatever it is, it's going to be horrible to use, but it's a beautiful print, so I really would like to use that. So once you've got all your fabric pieces cut out, we will get ready to do some stabilising. So the first thing you want to do is take your stabiliser and iron that to the wrong side of your outer fabric. And now I haven't cut mine to size yet because it frays so badly. I've left it a little bit bigger. I'm going to stabilise it and then I'll trim it down to size later. And I also need a small piece of lining for the tab, and I'll stabilise the lining side as well. I'll be right back. All right, I've fused the stabilizer to the wrong side of my lining and to the wrong side of my outer fabric, and we can now get started. So let's work on the tab or the flap first. I mentioned before that I'm using a magnetic closure instead of Velcro. So if you want to use Velcro instead, then go over and have a look at the other video that I did of this book pouch, which will show you how to put the Velcro in. Fold the lining in half. So we've got the longest side here and the shortest side there, and that's the centre. We need to position our washer over the top there somewhere, and I'm going to measure mine 2 centimetres from the top, and that means I can place this washer directly over that cross that we've got. So I'll mark a line on either side of the washer here, and those 2 little lines are the lines that we need to slit open. Grab your seam ripper and with the pointy end, go in at the bottom of that mark we've made, and with that pointy end on the other side, come up at the top of the mark that we've made. And by doing this, you're preventing yourself from slashing further on up and accidentally cutting a big hole. Slice through that, and then you've got a little hole there for the prong of your magnet. We'll do the same on the other side. Come up on the other side and split that open. Then we can grab one side of our magnet and put those prongs through to the other side. Grab your washer and place that over the top and spread those prongs apart. Now what we're going to do is curve the edge of our flap. So if you need a measurement, I'm just going to measure from the corner down 1 inch and across 1 inch and mark a curve around there. And I'll do that on this side as well. If you've got a circle template or anything with a rounded edge like a cotton reel or a plate, you can use that as well. Probably should have marked that before I put the magnet down. And now we can take our outer fabric with the right side up, the lining with the right side down. We can clip those edges together or pin it. And this is ready to go to the machine and be stitched. So we don't need to sew the bottom edge. We're just going to come up along the side, around the curve, keep coming around the other side. This isn't my stitching line. I'm going to treat this as the edge of my fabric, just like this is here. Set that one aside. This is the fabric for the handles. And you want to fold that in half lengthwise. And this fabric doesn't crease very well at all, so I'm just going to have to do a bit at a time. But you'll fold it in half lengthwise and then fold the raw edges into the centre. So with a difficult fabric like this, you can take it to the iron. You've just got to be careful, and really it doesn't stay in place when you're ironing it anyway, so I might as well just stick with what I'm doing. Fold that edge over and that one to meet in the middle, and then I can start clipping those edges together to hold them in place. If you want to stabilize this, you can do that. That will actually make it easier for you to fold it, but this is just a small bag. I don't think it really needs it. If you really have difficulty, you can actually draw a line right across the centre and then fold your fabric up to meet that line on both sides and then fold it in half. That's probably easier. All right, the two handles are ready. What we need to do is stitch down both long edges. Now this one's going to be a pain. It just frays. Grab your pocket pieces. If this were a printed fabric, we would want the two right sides facing, so the two printed sides facing each other. Before we do that though, we're going to take this piece of fabric and fold it in half. And do you know what I'm going to do? This is really annoying that I can't fold it in half and just leave it there. So I'm going to put some double-sided tape across the fabric. And then I'll fold that in half. So we want the wrong sides facing. You do have to excuse my hand here. I actually burnt myself on the oven last night. So I've got a nice little scar there. So with that folded in half, I'm going to place that on top of this piece of fabric, and the folded edge is going to face the inside. So we'll have the raw edge on the outside, and that will be lined up along the top there. And then we'll take this piece and place that right sides together, line up those edges. We want this nice and even. And this one we're going to sew right along the top edge here. We've got a good 1/2 inch of a folded piece of fabric here, and we only want to see about half of it, so the seam allowance I'm going to use for this is 1/4 inch. So we're going to sew all the way across, down both short edges and along here, and leave an opening at the bottom. And when you turn this the right way out, you're just going to have this little strip of fabric peeking out of the top. So it's purely decorative. It'll just break up that plainness of the fabric. Set that one aside, and we can grab our outer fabric, find the centre, mark that with a pin, and we're going to place the other side of the magnet on this piece of fabric. So we're going to make the same measurement that we did before on the flap. That was 2 centimetres or 3/4 inch. I'll place the washer over the top and then mark a line on each side. So those 2 markings there are what we need to cut out. In the bottom and out through the top, and push in and out and push. And from the outside we can place the other side of the magnet and the washer on this side. And to protect your fabric from wearing out with this magnet, you can iron another piece of stabiliser, just a small piece directly over the top, like that. And you can do the same for the flap as well. So you can just put another piece over the top of that. All right, so now we've got some sewing to do. We don't need the outer fabric just yet. We want to sew our flap all the way around. We've got the 2 handles. We need to sew both long edges, and with our pocket we'll start here, sew across there, up, across that little extra bit of fabric at the top there, down and back to here, back stitch at both ends, and that's all for now. I'm just using the edge of my presser foot as my guide, so that'll run along the edge of the fabric and it'll also run along the curve. We can do the pocket. And we can do both handles. All right, with the flap I'm going to cut this one close to the edge, and we'll turn this the right way out. Before we do that, I'm just going to place this over the top here, and I can secure it with some double-sided tape. And that will protect the outer fabric. Turn this the right way out, and we can top stitch right around the edge. This one's the pocket. We can clip the corners, and we'll turn this one the right way out, and you'll want to poke out the corners. We probably should have stabilised this pocket. I completely forgot to do that. It's not too late though. So if you feel as though you need to stabilise the pocket, you can go ahead and do that. We can go along and top stitch this edge here, and once we've done that, we're going to sew this onto the lining. So we'll stitch down here, across and up, and that will close this up. So we'll grab our lining now. So this will be the base of the bag, and when we place the pocket down, we want to centre that over this section of the bag. And at this stage, I haven't decided whether I'm boxing my corners or not, and I don't think I will be. So I've got all this area to play with. You don't want your pocket to go any further than that, and you don't want it to be too high at the top as well, in case you've got pens or something sticking out. So we're going to position this 2 inches from the top edge, and it'll be centered across this area here. So you'll just fold the fabric in half, find the center, fold that in half, find the center, and then you'll place your pocket 2 inches from the top edge. But first we have to stitch that. So I'll set that aside with my flap, and the handles are done. So I've trimmed them both so that they're the same size. And if we get our outer fabric, find the center again, and from the center we want to evenly position our handles. So I think that's around about right there. You can have it further apart if you like. You can have it closer together. It's really up to yourself. But I think that looks about right. So that will be 2 inches from the center as well. So the raw edge facing the top edge, and 5 centimeters or 2 inches from the center. Keeping your handle nice and flat. We'll do that on both sides. We can stitch that in place, and if you just flip that around, bring the other end up, you'll see where that pin is marked there, and you can grab the other handle and position that right where the other one is. And then you can check that they're lined up nicely. And then you can check that they're lined up evenly. Once you're happy with that, we'll take this to the machine and sew all the handles together as well. So let's take all of those with us now. For the top stitching, I'm increasing my stitch length to 4. And we'll top stitch that pocket edge. And I've reduced my stitch length back down to 3. And I'm going to do a narrow stitch across here, and I'll triple stitch over the handle as well. So you can see I've pinned the pocket onto the lining fabric, and I've left 2 inches at the top, and we'll sew all 3 sides. And along the bottom here, I've got the edges folded under. It's all nicely pressed, so that will close up that opening. I'll remove all my pins, and what I like to do when I create pockets is create a channel so that I can put a pen down there. So I'm just going to put my screwdriver in there, and that's about the width of my pen, but I like to just leave about 1 inch away from the stitching line, and that will allow for a nice thick marker. Back stitch at the bottom, and sew straight to the top. And if you wanted to put more pens, you could just make a whole heap of channels to go right across. But I think I'll just leave it at one. All right, we don't have much left. We've got our pocket in place, our flap is done, handles are done, and all we need to do now is put it all together. I will just cover the button there with some double-sided tape, and when I do, I'll actually put the double-sided tape right along the top edge, and when I come to doing the seam, that will actually get stitched in place. So that will protect the lining fabric. All right, we need to place the flap onto our bag, and we've got our magnet at this end. We're going to the other end. Find the centre again. Find the centre of your flap. And we're going to place the printed sides together. And you can take that to the machine now and stitch it in place, but I'm going to do that when I do the lining. With your lining, we want the pocket facing the printed side of the bag, and I'm going to go at the opposite end of my label, just because I want to. We'll line up the top edges. And we'll do the same for the other side. We'll take this back to the machine and sew both short edges. When we go over the area where the handles are, I will triple stitch that again. I really like to make sure my handles are very well secured. On this side, I'll do the same thing, and where the flap is, I'll triple stitch over that as well. And as usual, I will always sew with my stabilised fabric at the top. So that was my handle that I've just triple stitched. Now I'm coming up to the flap. And we'll repeat for the other side. You want to make sure that you're not going to sew over the metal part of your magnet as well. Let's turn this the right way out. No, let's not. Let's separate the lining from the outer fabric, and we'll find the top edge here, and we'll line up those seams. And we'll do that at both ends. And then line up your side edges evenly. And on your lining. Flip it over and repeat for the other side. Okay, we're almost done. We want to sew straight along here and this edge here. At this side, I'm going to leave a nice big opening, so I'll backstitch at this end and here, and that should be it. Let's go do that. Just check that you've lined up the seam along the top edge. Triple stitch over that. And we're going to leave an opening on this side. Leave a big opening there. Flip it around and repeat. Okay, we're just about finished. Now, it's up to you if you want to box your corners. I think I'd already decided for this bag I didn't want to box the corners because I've done it on my previous one. So if you want to box your corners, then decide what size you want. And for this, I would actually probably go really small. I would maybe just do a 1/2 inch corner from the stitching line and the fold line, but that's completely up to you. Whatever you do decide to do, it will shorten the height of your bag and also make it narrower by the amount that you've decided on your box corner. So if you choose a 1 inch box corner, this will be 1 inch shorter when it's finished, and you'll have 1 inch on each side for the boxing. It will make your bag 2 inches narrower. So keep that in mind. I'm not doing that. Instead, I'm just going to trim the corners. Neaten up any wispy edges. You can go and overlock this if you've got an overlocker or a serger, but it's on the inside of the bag. I'm not going to bother. And we'll turn this the right way out in just a moment. Now, with box corners, I like to bring my corners together so that it prevents the lining from coming out when I'm using the bag. What I'm going to do here is take just one side of the seam. So I've only got a very narrow seam just here, so there's about 1/4 inch. And I'm going to do the same on this side. And this fabric is terrible, so I'll just do the best I can. But what I'm going to do is this seam here and this one here, I'll bring those together and line it up along the bottom. And all I'm going to do is sew one side of that seam and one side of this seam together. And I'm only doing that at the very bottom. And I'll do that on this side as well. So it doesn't matter where I've trimmed it, I'll start up this side. I'll just put a couple of stitches in here onto the outer fabric, but only on the 2 center pieces. So the one on the seam on the outside, I'll leave it. This seam I'm going to leave. I'm just going to sew the 2 center parts of the seam. So I have the bottom edge lined up, and I'm going to move the back seam out of the way. We only need to catch a little bit of the fabric, and I'll move the top seam or piece of fabric out of the way. And you may just have to clip those layers together so that the bits that you don't want to sew over are clipped out of the way. And just on the very edge, close to where the seam is, I'll do a couple of stitches, and that's it. So the top part of the seam is not done, the bottom part's not done, just the 2 middle pieces are connected. And I'll do the same on the other end. So one side of the lining is out of the way, and I'll move the top edge of the fabric. Probably shouldn't have trimmed it back. So it wasn't really necessary to do this, but I find it really annoying when the linings in bags come out when you're putting things in and out, and that will help keep that lining in place. So you can find the opening and pull everything through now. And keep folding it out so that the lining is to the outside and the outer fabric is on the inside of the bag, because we need to close this up and we do still need to top stitch. So find your seam at the side there, move your outer fabric out of the way and pinch those edges together. We'll stitch that closed, and then we can neaten up the top edge. And once that's all tidy, we can take that to the machine as well and top stitch all the way around. Now when I top stitch, especially for bags like this, I tend not to top stitch really close to the top edge. My seam underneath finishes around about there at the end of my nail, so I will top stitch halfway between that, and that way the bulk of this fabric here will be nice and secure and sit more flat underneath. Of course, you don't want to sew over your magnet, but I'll have plenty of room there. Let's go finish this bag. So I'll close up the side seam first and just make sure that the outer fabric isn't anywhere near your stitching area. So that one's done, and keeping your bag inside out, I find it easier to top stitch this way, that way I can see my outer fabric. And I'll start on the side seam. I should have mentioned that the top stitching was going to be 4mm, but I forgot. Doesn't matter. So here's the inside of our bag with that little bit of contrast at the top of the pocket. I just think that adds a nice feature to it, and it does make it easier to spot the pocket as well. We'll turn this the right way around, poke out your corners. Isn't this a beautiful print? I just love it. Absolutely hate the fabric, but the print is just gorgeous. And this pocket that we've got on the inside, if you go in and pull that, it can't come out. So just stitching it a little bit on the sides will secure that so that you don't have the problem of the lining coming out. Now I've intentionally put my magnet up a little bit higher. When it comes to the instructions, I might make it a little bit further down. I did this because I wanted extra room at the top here in case I had a really thick book to put in the bag. I don't think it really needs it, so we might make this 1 inch from the top and the edge of the flap as well, and that'll just bring that down a little bit. That'll come in a bit and the flap will close over a little bit more. Such a gorgeous print. So what do you think? I actually like the way this one's turned out. It looks gorgeous with the fabric. I do love this print. And look, the fabric itself wasn't that hard to work with. It frays a lot, and that's just really annoying. It doesn't cut very well with the rotary cutter either. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this one. Turned out beautifully, I think. I'll probably put it in the shop for about $35. I'm not going to make any more though. This one was just for you guys. Everybody else is going to have to make their own. So plenty of room in there for a book. This book measures, I'll write it up on the materials list, what size book you can get in there, because I haven't got a clue. So there you go. Little tiny handles and a small bag. This is great as just a little carry bag or a handbag as well. You don't have to have this as a book or a tablet pouch. It can be perfectly used as a small handbag to go out with you next time you go out. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I shall catch you next time. Bye for now.